Hey guys, nice to have you here. I am getting decidedly plump, as you can no doubt see. And before I subject myself to the abject misery of dieting seriously once I'm back in Japan, there has just been time to enjoy some fine dining here in London. On Friday, we had dinner at La Dame de Pic. Look at this lovely amuse-bouche. Isn't it beautiful? Here's another that was most delicious. I tell you what, my bouche was highly amused. La Dame de Pic in London opened in 2017, and I wanted to go mostly because I read it had been awarded a second Michelin star for the 2020 guide. What big old Bibendum has to say isn't always the best guide to the world's finest food, especially not in Japan. But I do tend to trust their judgment on French cuisine, so we went to give it a try. The restaurant is in the new Four Seasons Hotel just opposite the Tower of London, which is one of the more beautiful parts of town. And the Beaux Arts style building, 10 Trinity Square, is a very impressive edifice with its big old statue and sturdy fluted Corinthians. I couldn't get a shot of the building at night that shows how impressive it is. So let's just slap in a pic from Google Maps. Look at that magnificent beast. The restaurant doesn't necessarily show off the building like some venues do, but the setting is stylish and elegant, and I'd say comes with something of a sense of old world grandiosity that I really enjoy, while still being nice and sleek and lovely. Just look at it. Very swanky. More importantly, how about the food? Mostly it was really superb cooking. Like many top restaurants named along these lines, you can't really expect the chef the restaurant is named after to actually be there cooking. The Gordon Ramsays and Joel Robuchons of the world can't be in all their restaurants simultaneously, and mostly aren't in any of them. So Anne-Sophie Pic of Maison de Pic in France is called the executive chef, and her style of cooking gets highlighted, but it's Luca Piscazzi, the head chef, actually doing the cooking, and his team, of course. No complaints from me, as his work was exquisite, and of the many fine dining restaurants we've been to, that I regret not making videos about, this was up in the top 15, maybe top 20. We chose the 6-course tasting menu, somewhat cheesily called Journey, and started with a familiar staple from Japan, bluefin tuna. And in a nice playful touch, it was accompanied by lots of other things that are the same purpley red colour as the uncooked fish. Beetroots and berries and pepper ice cream. Yes, I did say pepper ice cream. Quite a cheeky idea, but all the flavours worked together better than I expected for a concept that seemed mostly a presentation gimmick. And we were off to a good start. It didn't hurt that the bread was delicious too, especially with this salted and prettily shaped butter. Next was perhaps the simplest dish, but actually my favourite. It was essentially posh ravioli, pasta with cheese inside, and a hazelnut consommé. What a strong, bold flavour, really delicious. I'd have had a bucket of those babies and been a happy camper. Things got serious with the fish course, stone bass with actual ravioli, I suppose, tying the courses together. The fish had a very pleasant flavour, and the strong citrus notes from the orange sauce were not exactly what I expected, but made for a very interesting, unfamiliar flavour combination that really struck me as actually quite clever, especially so when capped off by the sharp hit of the paired wine, which for me wasn't very tasty except when matched with this dish. Probably the biggest disappointment was the main course, some A4 Kagoshima Wagyu beef, which was actually a supplement. We paid extra for it. Wagyu, which for some reason everyone on TV here in the UK seems to call Wagyu, isn't necessarily high quality, as the word just means Japanese beef. But this was a cut of very fatty, high-grade meat. Compared with what we have in places like the New York Grill in Shinjuku though, it just didn't have the strong flavour to complement and enhance the fattiness, and ultimately just wasn't as flavoursome as it really should have been.
The cheese that followed was a kind of soft, fluffy souffle affair with chutney buried deep inside it. It had a strong umami flavour that was a bit overpowering for me. Fortunately, the dessert ended things with a bang. The white mi frit is something of a signature for Sophie Pic, and I think it's pretty wondrous. The pastry is coated with a Tahitian vanilla cream, which not only looks remarkable, it has the perfect complementary flavour to the soft, flaky pastry within.
Overall, the cooking reminded me somewhat of Hélène d'Arros at Connaught. And while the really big, bold flavours of the food you get at Gordon Ramsay at Royal Hospital Road or Galvin-la-Chapelle are a little more aligned with my taste, this was absolutely delicious, introduced some new subtle flavour combinations to me, and it was a very pleasing experience. The staff were all lovely, the sommelier very informative, and the setting felt just right for the kind of cooking we enjoyed. There was a little error on our bill, and they made a small mistake with one of our party's allergy requirements, which could, in different circumstances, have been a huge mistake, but they were very apologetic and did everything they could to make up for it. An excellent dining experience. I wasn't done with stuffing myself silly in England just yet, though. I wanted 3 more meals before I headed to Japan. A hearty curry, good dim sum, and something very British. So I had one a day and piled on the pounds. First was my dad's recommendation for curry, the Bombay Brasserie in Kensington. It was very fashionable in the 80s and 90s and purports to be more authentic than your average curry house here. So we went for the weekend lunch buffet. The starters certainly struck me as authentic, not that I actually have much of a basis for comparison, having never been to India myself. And then there were plenty of choices for the main course. The lamb was probably my favourite, although I did wonder why nothing was what I'd call spicy. I'm not great with spice, but I'd like at least one dish with a bit more of a kick. Still, we ate a lot. I was so full I could only have this little panna cotta fella for dessert. Look at that cute little guy. Next day was dim sum, so we headed for the Soho area that used to be my favourite place to hang out with friends when I lived in London. Just down the road from Piccadilly Circus, but in the opposite direction from Chinatown, is the new Imperial Treasure. This is a branch of the restaurant chain that has 2 Michelin stars in Shanghai and has managed to obtain 1 star in multiple other locations in the Far East. The speciality is the 100-pound Peking duck, but we wanted none of that. We've had expensive Peking duck before, including in Minjiang and, in Beijing. And honestly, I prefer the cheaper, crispy aromatic duck that they serve everywhere in the UK. Maybe I'm just a pleb. And besides, what I was really after was dim sum, and Imperial Treasure did that with aplomb. Chong fun, chashbao, shumai, hagao, xiaolongbao, and more. All my favourites, and a few extras to try out for the first time. All were full of flavour and prepared expertly to make the tastes bold while still highlighting the superior basic flavours of the ingredients. Super tasty. Honestly, cheap and cheerful dim sum works just fine for me, especially served through trolleys, but occasionally trying the same thing with a little more refinement is really welcome. Even if what I'll end up craving is really the lower cost local stuff. And for dinner that night we got a cheeky crispy duck. Last came something British, so we returned to one of my favourite restaurants for English fare, and the place I usually send Japanese people who want to know where to eat British food beyond just fish and chips. Obviously, British food doesn't have the best reputation around the world, and having been to the kind of restaurants my grandma loved, that does make sense. But venues like Roast at least show there is a side to be proud of that isn't a guilty pleasure like a faux English brekkie, which admittedly I did make a point of scoffing last week. Plus, I'd only recently found out that the facade at the front of Roast is actually the old Ian Barry designed floral hall from the Royal Opera House. I found that nugget of information out when I noticed the modern hall had been drawn in a recent chapter of Kroshitsky, set in Victorian London. Tisk tisk. Unfortunately, I should have researched the menu a little better, because I was after their super tasty beef Wellington, but they only do that on Saturdays now as a daily special. Curses! Instead, I just got belly pork with apple sauce. Kind of British, but not exactly super beautiful and a bit on the chewy side. Not bad at all, but I am pretty bewildered as to why they would lock all of their best dishes behind this daily special system. I guess they don't have enough custom on a weekday to justify making a full beef Wellington. Guess I'll just have to start looking for a restaurant that does. Didn't scratch the itch for a very British meal though, so I got a cheeky little pie from the market to have for dinner, and jammy dodgers for afters. Oh yes indeed, delicious jammy dodgers. So that's the end of my gastronomic adventure this time. But I also had fun with my friend Rikk after Bombay Brasserie. We arranged to meet at the Natural History Museum, where there were dinosaurs and whales and crocodiles and frogs and whale skeletons and all sorts of things. I'm a little sad that Dippy, the huge replica Diplodocus or Diplodocus skeleton that always used to welcome you in the spectacular entrance hall, has been replaced with just a whale skeleton, but hey, shogunai, as the Japanese say. Can't be helped. We went to the Science Museum as well, where Rikk wanted to see a cryptography exhibition that was mostly pretty superficial stuff, though I felt like there was some kind of secret code in the fact that this had to be the only exhibit on Bletchley Park ever curated to not even bother to mention Alan Turing. We oohed and ahed at various other mechanical marvels from throughout the ages.
Is it really that big?
Then had a quick peek in the Royal Albert Hall, then went for coffee with another mi fui, because you can never have enough mi fuis. Another great opportunity to butcher the pronunciation for you guys. My coffee was some super fancy praline thing, very fancy. Now this video has probably gotten long by now, even if I've read it in some super hyperactive Garrett Watts way, which I probably haven't. Garrett Watts is my favourite YouTuber, by the way. But I want to finish up with a bit of a goodbye to this flat. This is where I filmed the very first video for this channel, way back when, and I'm enjoying having revived it now, no matter how few or how many views I get. And this might just be the last time I'm here. I'm going to sell the place in autumn and may not get another chance to come back before it changes hands, or at the very least before it's emptied and gets prepared for renovation. But I lived here for what, 5 or 6 years, something like that, and there are a lot of good memories here. Friends gathered around this room, laughing and eating pizza and playing Guitar Hero or Mario Party. The first giddy days of a long-term relationship with all the fireworks that come with that. Skyping my literary agent to first agree on a deal and then later to learn that my book got sold. Dressing up in silly costumes to go to the comic convention down the road. I'll miss the place. I think I've been a little harsh on London, remembering it lately. Going to places like Kensington and Tower Hill remind me of the pleasant, historical, beautiful areas. People are polite and smile and even exchange a sentence or two here and there. Kids are playing happily on the tube and people are holding doors open for you. It feels pretty nice actually. It was almost uncanny how at the exact stop I needed to change trains to get to my flat, that's when people start glaring at one another, playing music loudly on their phones, cutting in front of you when you're on the station platform waiting for other people to get off the train. You know, there are definitely parts of London, expensive parts, where life is very pleasant. But I'll stop there because I don't want to sound classist, you know. Life in suburban Japan just suits me better, personally. And that doesn't mean it's objectively better. Other people might be more at home in this part of London than I am, and that's fine. And you know what else I'll miss? The view. It's lovely at night. Here, it looks like this. You can see the dome and Canary Wharf. It's a pretty gorgeous view right now as well. Here, I'll show you. Let's leave it on this view. I think this is what I want to remember. See you guys again for the next video.